Hello， 大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博然。The Hong Kong government has released arrest warrants for 8 people they accuse of serious national security offences. But all this girl cares about is letting everyone know her face isn't that wide in real life. We rallied for a Twitter community note pushing Washington propaganda to be removed and succeeded. And China places controls on the export of rare earth minerals that the US desperately needs. But it seems they don't like the taste of their own medicine. This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Borham in Shanghai. Let's get reporting. Beijing has made its first serious countermove after months of being pushed around by Washington in the computer chip industry, controlling exports of 2 rare earth components that are vital in the production of semiconductor chips. In October last year, the Biden regime announced wide-ranging export controls specifically designed to damage China's technological development. Reuters explained at the time, the raft of measures could amount to the biggest shift in US policy toward shipping technology to China since the 1990s. If effective, they could hobble China's chip manufacturing industry by forcing American and foreign companies that use US technology to cut off support for some of China's leading factories and chip designers. Beijing has fought back, limiting the export of germanium and gallium, 2 important rare earth components used in the production of semiconductors that the world relies on China for. The Western media are reporting the move as some kind of sanction, but China doesn't need to play that dirty. Instead, all China has done is list the 2 components as strategic materials, which means now that anyone from China who wishes to export them needs to apply for permission from the Ministry of Commerce. If it turns out that said exports are going toward the production of military equipment in the US, for example, that permission might be denied. And it's a serious threat. China currently produces 68% of the global output of germanium and a staggering 95% of gallium. While US sanctions on China force companies around the world not to be able to sell the very best computer chips to China, literally stopping technological development, Beijing's move is just a warning that the Chinese side also knows how to play ball. As can be expected though, the Western media has gone nuts. Reuters misleadingly ran with this headline: Beijing jabs in US-China tech fight with chip material export curbs, saying, companies caught out by China's decision to restrict exports of 2 metals widely used in semiconductors and electric vehicles were racing to secure supplies on Tuesday, as some industry suppliers worried that curbs on rare earth exports could follow. This take from Reuters is completely misleading, since China has not enacted any restrictions on export at all. Instead, Beijing has put a process in place that it could restrict export if it decides to. Trust me, China doesn't want to do that, but as the Global Times correctly stated, this is meant as a warning. They said, the US has been roping in its allies to escalate the chip war and high-tech crackdown against China, disregarding the potential damage the technological Iron Curtain may cause to global supply and industrial chains. But now the question is how long Washington can ignore the warning over the consequences when China starts taking legitimate and reasonable measures to safeguard its national security and interests. It should be made clear that China's imposition of export controls on gallium and germanium products doesn't necessarily mean a ban on exports of relevant items. The Global Times piece rightly goes on to point out that China has worked hard, often at the detriment of its own natural environment, to supply these elements to the world in the first place, and now Washington wants to see it locked out of any benefits. For years, China has been exploiting its limited rare earth resources to supply key rare metals at the expense of the environment to support the development of global strategic emerging industries such as semiconductors. Yet, The US-led chip war has seen China being cut off chip supplies and other relevant equipment, materials and technologies, which is clearly hurting China's interests in terms of the industrial chain, rare earth resources, and environmental protection. So hopefully Washington will take the warning and do the right thing, removing its debilitating and extremely unfair restrictions on China when it comes to importing the most advanced computer chips. If they choose to ignore, Beijing can and will act. Now time for some funny news. The government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region recently released search warrants and a $1 million Hong Kong dollar bounty on 8 Hong Kongers in exile overseas who are accused of breaching the national security law, including subversion, collusion with foreign forces, incitement to secession, and incitement to subversion. The Hong Kong government has vowed to pursue them for life until they're brought back to the city to face a court of law. But one of the 8, Anna Kwok, who now lives in Washington, D.C., go figure, wasn't concerned with clearing her name or announcing she's innocent. No, instead she wanted to let the world know on Twitter that her face isn't as fat as depicted in the search warrant photo. LOL, she said on Twitter. For those who asked, yes, this is the photo I used to renew my HK ID card when I was 18. Note, they widened the photo on the warrant before posting the original pic just to prove her face isn't that fat. Ivor made a really hilarious and fitting reply. The CPC widened my 18-year-old face on the warrant. LOL, ma'am, this isn't Vogue behind bars. You are the only wanted criminal I have ever encountered who would rather whine about how she looks on her warrant than defend herself. You HK rioters have always struck me as stupid, but this takes the cake. You can return to Hong Kong to get a new photo taken for your warrant if you are truly that distressed by the way you look. Nice one. Last up today, while we're speaking of Twitter, we were able to secure a rare defeat against blatant anti-China propaganda yesterday by having a malicious and false Twitter community note underneath a tweet by the spokesperson of China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs deleted. The original tweet was a response to the Swedish deciding that the burning of the Quran was a matter of freedom of speech. The spokesperson said, China rejects all forms of Islamophobia. No one should be allowed to use freedom of speech as an excuse to stoke conflict and pit one civilization against another. Pretty soon, a Twitter community note appeared which said, China is currently attempting genocide against Uyghur Muslims. Of course, this is blatantly false, and even the UN has admitted there is no evidence to support such an atrocious claim. I did my part by bringing the propaganda-laden community note to the attention of Twitter's CEO Elon Musk, arguing, there is no genocide against Uyghurs in China. Twitter community notes should not be used as a tool to spread Washington propaganda. Soon after, the note was deleted, much to the chagrin of many anti-China Twitter users. Sorry about that. Anyway, you guys, that's going to be it for today. But as always, I'd love to know what you think. Do let me know down below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.